Hello and welcome to everyone joining us from around the globe. Thank you for being part of the first webinar of Payatu. I'm Pratik Kumare, Payatu's media strategist, and I'll be one of your hosts for today's event. I think it is unprecedented time with things being shut down and not knowing exactly how long it's gonna last, worrying about the health of all people we care about. I'm lucky that we get to connect up with video conferencing. And this week, we will introduce you to very fundamentals of machine learning and deep learning and its implementation in security specific use cases. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can ask using Q&A option, which is there on Zoom platform. So before starting the webinar, I would like to talk to you about what we do. So we are a research-powered cybersecurity consulting and training company. We protect the reputation of enterprises. Also, we work with the community and we are part of the community. And Payatu's contribution impacts the community at large. We also organize Nullcon and Hardware.io, renowned security conferences. These forums are empowering the world to build a secure hardware and security ecosystem in Asia, Europe, and the USA. Also, Payatu is a product company. We have two products, Exploity and CloudFirst. Exploity is an open source framework for IoT security testing and exploitation. It is a product of our experience and expertise in the field of IoT security. And CloudFirst is a platform that lets you test your code for bugs by running your software with millions of test cases with a technique called fuzzing. We also provide security consulting and services. Our comprehensive cybersecurity services not only help organizations to assess, build, and manage their cybersecurity capabilities, but also enable them to respond to incidents and crises. We have security services ranging from IoT security testing, web and mobile application security testing, red team security assessment, secure code review, and so on. You can see here on the slide what type of security services we provide at Payatu. As well as we organize workshops and training around the globe. Our deep technical training provides in-depth knowledge of the subject with a prime focus on hands-on labs that enable attendees to get through grasp of the concepts. We have been organizing workshops and training in Black Hat, DEF CON, OSCERT, ZeroCon, PhDs, and many other conferences around the globe. Now we will start with the webinar. Today's webinar is about introduction to ML and DL2 security. And today's speaker is Nikhil Joshi. Nikhil Joshi is a security researcher working with us. He's currently working on implementation of ML in offensive and defensive security products. At Payatu, he has compiled methodologies to pen test machine learning application against ML specific vulnerabilities and loves to explore new ways to hack ML powered applications. Nikhil, over to you, and thank you for joining us today. And if you guys have any questions during the webinar, you can ask using Q&A button, which is there on the Zoom platform. I will hand over the mic to Nikhil. Nikhil, let's start with the webinar.
Hey, hello everyone. So in this webinar, we'll have some introduction to machine learning and deep learning, and we'll look at its applications in cybersecurity. So this webinar is there to give you an intuition behind few ML applications and algorithms in cybersecurity, and it may not teach you the ML in detail, but it will surely be a good start and give you a good momentum to start learning ML or implementing ML in cybersecurity applications. So today we'll go through first we'll go through some basic terminologies behind machine learning and deep learning, and we'll look at some libraries that we are going to use. Then we'll understand the intuition behind few algorithms like logistic regression and neural networks. And we have one malware detection application which we are going to build using logistic regression and neural networks. So here are some of the applications that are currently using machine learning in cybersecurity. So few companies are using machine learning to build web application firewalls, intrusion detection systems, malware classifiers, antiviruses, spam filters, and whatnot. So basically, wherever there is some pattern in your data set and it is not humanly possible to deterministically program a program to classify samples in those data set, we can use machine learning there. So first of all, I would like to just tell you that instead of directly using machine learning or implementing machine learning for your use case, please go ahead and try few deterministic or basic algorithms first. If you are not getting good results, then only come for machine learning. So these are some of the basic terminologies. We'll go through it one by one. So first is data set. For every machine learning algorithm, you may are aware about that you need to have a huge data set to start with. So in case of malware detection engines, or if you are going to build a malware classifier, you need to have a data set of malware samples and non-malware samples. So using that data set, you will pull out some features from those samples. So let's say you can use other libraries, third-party libraries, to pull out some of the features from those binary files which are responsible for that file being classified as malware or not malware. So, and other example could be, say, image recognition algorithms, where say you have an image of apple and orange and you want to classify the data set into apples and oranges. In that case, the pixels of images can be called as features, and the label will be if the image is orange or is it an apple. Then we'll divide that data set into training and testing sets. So a part of data set will be used to train a model, and then another part of data set will be used to evaluate those models. Then loss function is a function which determines how well your model is doing on given training data set. So every time we train our model, we run the model through a loss function, and it will tell you whether the model is fitting good to data set or not. Then there is an optimization function, which is responsible for training the model itself. We'll have a look at these functions later on in upcoming slides. So there is something called as supervised and unsupervised learning. In supervised learning, you have access to labels. So let's say you have a bunch of images and you know what an image represents in the data set, which means you have a supervised, which means you have a labeled data set, and supervised machine learning algorithms can be used to train a model on that labeled data set. And in case if you don't have labels for the data set, you can use unsupervised machine learning algorithms to build clusters of your data set and then label those clusters with whatever that is relevant to your use case. So these are some of the libraries that we are going to use in today's demonstration. First is TensorFlow. TensorFlow is an open source library built by Google. So it is a deep learning library where you can build multiple deep learning applications. Scikit-learn is mostly used for machine learning applications. Then Keras is a wrapper over TensorFlow. So Keras kind of makes it easier for beginners to use TensorFlow. And we are going to use Keras to build our neural network today. OpenCV is mostly used for image processing. Then there is PyTorch, which is a replacement for TensorFlow, similar to TensorFlow. And NumPy is mostly used for processing matrices. So everything you do in deep learning or machine learning, at the core of your algorithm, you are dealing with matrices, and NumPy is useful for that. So this is how an ML application works in production. So you have one data set, then you pass it to a training algorithm and it will build a model for you. After you get a good model, you try different algorithms and you try different hyperparameters to build a good model. After you get a good model, you either deploy it to cloud or you deploy it in your applications, which can be accessed by your end users. So this is one example data set that we are going to work on. The link to data set is there in the slides. Yeah, so now this data set can be used to classify files as malwares and not malwares. So this data set was compiled using PE file library. So they have used PE file library to extract some features from every binary, and there are total 56 number of features. So total 56 number of columns, each column representing one feature. So, and there are two classes. So one class is whether the file is legitimate or the file is malicious. So the last column, which is 57th column in the data set, will represent whether the file is malicious or not, which can be called as labels. So here we have label data set, and we can use supervised machine learning algorithms to build a model. And there are total 138,000 samples approximately in our data set. So we'll have a look at this data set afterwards. After we learn about algorithms, we'll take a look at data set and build new models on that data set. So this is how a trained model will work. So as I have said previously that there are two classes in our data set. Here you can see that there are yellow dots and purple dots in your model, in your data set, and the model builds some decision boundaries to classify those dots or those samples to one of the classes. So these are some of the decision boundaries built by different algorithms. So you can see that different algorithms may fit well to your data set and some algorithms may not fit well to your data set. So this is a trial and error process which every application builder who is building ML applications has to go through. So let's start with our first machine learning model, machine learning algorithm, which is logistic regression. So logistic regression is mostly used for binary classifications problems. What binary classification means is that if there are two classes, which means it's a binary classification problem. Just like in our ML malware classification problem, there are only two classes. So first class represents malware files and second class represents legitimate files. So it's a binary classification problem. Others are multi-class classification problems. So say you have to classify handwritten digits. So there are 10 digits, which means there are 10 classes. So that will be a multi-class classification problem. So this machine learning algorithm, which is called logistic regression, is mostly used for binary classification. Let's have a look at how logistic regression works. So this function here represents a logistic regression function, logistic function. That's why the algorithm is called as logistic regression algorithm. So here in the graph, you can see that how the function will work. So these red dots represent, say, malicious files, and the green dots represent non-malicious files. So building this algorithm, building this logistic regression model, you can apply a threshold and say that after this threshold, if you get the output below this threshold, then the file could be malicious. And if you get the output above this threshold, the file could be non-malicious. So just to get an intuition behind how this particular equation works, we'll take a look at this equation in something called as Desmos calculator. So here you can see that I have plotted the same equation, which is the logistic equation. It's also called a sigmoid equation, sigmoid function. So we have two parameters here, which is W and B. And the X will represent the input. So X will represent the features that we are passing to our model. So on every feature, it has to classify that particular sample, respective sample, as malicious or non-malicious. So here you can see that when I change the value of W and B, it will shift and distort the graph in a particular space. So by changing the values of weights and biases, as we call them in machine learning, you can build this graph, and which will be called as a model for your particular data set. Yeah, so while running the demo, we'll look at how to build logistic regression model using scikit-learn library. Now, these are some more different machine learning algorithms. So there is linear regression, where you can just draw a line to classify two different classes. There is something called as decision tree, which is a tree-based algorithm, where every class will be represented by leaf node of that tree. So the training algorithm will actually generate that tree, and which can be again used for classification on your data set. Then there is random forest. Random forest is basically a collection of multiple decision trees. So it comes under category of ensemble learning, where you ensemble different models that have been already trained on some data set for classification, and combinedly you can create new results, which is how the random forest will work. And then there is something called as support vector machines. So this is a brief idea about how machine learning algorithms works. Now we'll move towards deep learning. So the main fundamental difference between machine learning and deep learning is that whenever you're dealing with machine learning applications, you have to do some pre-processing on your data set. You have to select features manually so that you can pass it to model, and model will understand the relevancy of each feature. But in case of deep learning algorithms, you don't have to worry about selecting features. So deep learning algorithms are itself have been proven to be more more efficient at selecting features and identifying what features are responsible for that particular sample being classified to its respective class. So in deep learning algorithms, we are going to study neural networks. So this is a basic building block of neural networks. And neural networks are designed and are inspired from how a human brain works. So in our brain, we have multiple neurons which are connected, and it creates the information from our sensory inputs, like from visual inputs or audio inputs, and then it classifies that particular sample to a class, and which is responsible for our actions. So the idea is that if you mathematically model a human neuron, and then we can implement that in computers and simulate how a human learns. So this is how the mathematical model of human neural network will work. So there are incoming inputs from sensory nodes, which could be features in our case. So here x's are represented as features, and each feature will have some weights associated with it. So all those weights and features are multiplied and added and are passed to an activation function. Now the activation function will determine whether the neuron is activated or not activated, which means if the value of activation function is higher, then we can say that the neuron is activated. And if it's lower, then we can say that the neuron is not activated. And when we connect these bunch of neurons in a network, we can call it as a neural network. Here you can have a look at how different activation functions that are currently being used. So there is one sigmoid activation function which looks similar to the logistic function that we have previously seen. There is something called as tanh, and there is something called as ReLU. So the main difference between different activation functions is that the range of outputs of activations. So in sigmoid, you'll get the output between range 0 and 1. No matter what the input is, you'll always get the output between range 0 and 1. In tanh, it is from -1 to 1. In case of ReLU, if the input is negative, then you will get output as 0. If the input is positive, you will get the same value in outputs. So it ranges from 0 to positive infinity. So recently, ReLU was pretty recently discovered, and researchers have shown that in multiple training algorithms, in multiple deep learning algorithms, ReLU was seen to be have working good while training the algorithms. So mostly you can see that ReLU is being used uh, in most of the machine deep learning applications. But you are free to use different activation functions and change your model and train it on different data set and then evaluate it. So let's take an example of handwritten digit recognition problem. So you have this image which represents an handwritten digit. So in this particular example, we have 3 written inside an image. So every image is of size 28 by 28. So this is a constraint for using any neural network. You have to have the input size, a constant size of input. So 28 by 28 turns out to be 784 pixel values, ranging from 0 to 255, considering it's a grayscale image. So every neural network will have one input layer and one output layer. So the only rule behind using neural networks is that you should have a number of neurons in input layer should be equal to number of features. So here there are 784 features, which means in input layer you will have 784 neurons. And in output layer, the number of neurons in output layer should be equal to number of classes. So there are 10 classes, which represents 10 digits, and hence there are 10 neurons in your output layer. Now there is no rule about using number of neurons in hidden layers or number of hidden layers that you can have. So this is an experimentation process which you will go through to build a better model and test it on testing set. And you can change the value, change the number of neurons in hidden layers, or you can change the number of hidden layers you have in a neural network. So in previous slide, we have seen that there is some weight associated with every input. So we have these 784 pixel values that are coming in as input to your neural network. And with all those 784 values, we have some weights associated with it. So using those weights, the next layer is connected to previous layer. And those weights and biases are randomly initialized when you create a neural network. So obviously, if you have randomly initialized weights and biases, you'll get some random output at output layer, which cannot be used for classification. So ideally, you should get the highest activation at third neuron in output layer, or the neuron that represents number 3 in output layer. But as you can see, if you have random weights, you'll get some garbage output at output layer of the neural network. So our task is to identify what are the best weights and biases for the neural network, where you can get particular output at output layer. So meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can write them in the Q&A box. And after some time, we'll have a Q&A discussion where we'll take these questions and answer them. So now, what does training a neural network means? It means we are just changing the values of those weights and biases so that if you pass in some image at input layer, it will give you respective output at output layer so that the neural network will recognize what is there inside that image. So we'll take a look at how this training algorithm works or how the training process works. So the algorithms that are used for training are called optimization algorithms. The algorithm that we are going to see here is called stochastic gradient descent, which is a type of convex optimization algorithm. So in an abstract way, what optimization algorithm does is that it takes the input parameters. So in our case, weights and biases, which are randomly initialized, are input parameters. It runs the neural network through a loss function, which will tell you how good the model is predicting. So the loss function is a quantitative measure of the predicted values and the actual values. So using that, the optimization algorithm will know what input parameters to tweak. And after running multiple iterations of optimization algorithm, it will give you trained parameters. So it will give you the weights and biases that are uh, probably efficient to make predictions on your dataset. So this is a mathematical representation of stochastic gradient descent. So here you can see that the z-axis, which is the vertical axis, represents the loss value, and x and y are the parameters. Consider x and y as weights and biases. It could be a multiple hyperdimensional space. So here it is a two-dimensional space of parameters, which has only two parameters. But in case of neural network, you can imagine if you have, say, 3 layers and each layer has 30 neurons. So it could have multiple, like thousands of weights. So it could be a 1,000-dimensional hyperspace where the optimization algorithm will work. So the way optimization algorithm will works is that it takes the partial derivative of your loss function. So just a recall of what derivative represents is that it represents a slope uh, on a curve, right? If you uh, calculate a partial derivative with respect to weights, you'll get a slope with respect to weights in that hyperdimensional space. So in this particular example, you can see that after every iteration, the loss is decreasing. So initially the loss stands here, and then after every iteration, it goes on decreasing to get the set of weights and biases which give you minimum loss value. So this is how a convex optimization works in mathematically. So once you get this value, you can uh, use that value to change the current weights and get new weights, which are Wi plus 1 here. Now let's talk about this parameter called as alpha. So this is also called as learning rate, which tells you how intensely you are going to make changes in the weights. So if you are making very abrupt changes in the weights, you may not reach the minima of your hyperdimensional curve. If you are, say, making very low changes, then it may take more iterations to reach the minima or to gain minimum loss. So it is again a trial and error exercise where you have to find out a perfect learning rate for your algorithm on your particular data set. So these are some other optimization algorithms. So these algorithms or the mathematical representation of these convex optimization algorithms may look scary, but believe me, it is not that difficult to understand if you just go through how those algorithms are evolved by time. So initially it was stochastic gradient descent, then using some experimentations, it was evolved in different algorithms. Right now, the state of the art optimization algorithms are RMSProp and ADAM optimizer. So in our demonstration, we are going to use these optimizers to train a model and fit it to a malware classification dataset. So once we apply the optimization algorithms on, on weights and biases, you'll get a set of weights and biases which can be implemented in neural network. And when you pass some input to that neural network, you will get the activation at right neuron, which represent the class of your past input. So in this particular case, we are passing 2 as a handwritten digit to your neural network, and it will tell you that the neuron which represents value 2 will be activated. So in our case, we have a binary classification problem, which means we could have two neurons at output layer, or we can also have just one neuron at output layer. So in our demonstration, we are going to use just single neuron at output layer. So the activation of that neuron, we can apply a threshold on that activation and classify the input to be of either class. So these are few more deep learning algorithms which, considering the constraints of time we have, cannot go through all these algorithms, but let me give you a brief idea of how these algorithms work. So there is something called as convolutional neural networks. So these neural networks are mostly used for image classification problems. So they are built for image classification. There is an operation called convolution in these neural networks, which identifies features inside image like texture or very high level and low level features inside the image. And it will use those features to classify a particular image to a class. In cybersecurity, you can use these algorithms. So I have seen malware classifiers use these algorithms on binary files. So you can represent binary files as an image and then pass it to convolutional neural network to identify few functions that are vulnerable in a binary file. Or you can also use convolutional neural networks on spectrograms. So let's say you have some radio frequency and you want to classify that frequency, that radio data to some value, some class. Then you can represent the radio signal as spectrogram and then pass it to convolutional neural network. And it can be used for classification of radio signals. Then there is something called as recurrent neural networks and LSTMs. So LSTM is a type of recurrent neural network. So these neural networks are mostly designed to deal with time series data sets. But in cybersecurity, we have used it for fuzzing process. So to generate a very grammatical or context specific inputs for fuzzing targets, we can use LSTMs to generate those samples and use those samples for fuzzing. Then there are few other methods called as deep belief networks and autoencoders, which are similar to the neural networks that we have just seen. So let's go towards our demonstration and talk about malware classifiers that we are going to build. So let's again have a quick look at what our data set is. So it has 56 features which are extracted from different PE files, and it has used PE file Python library to extract those features. Then the last column in our data set will represent label. So there are 56 columns which represent features, and 57th column will represent the label. The label will tell you whether the sample belongs to a malicious class or non-malicious class. And there are total approximately 138,000 samples. So this is how you go ahead with building a machine learning model or deep learning model. First load data set using different libraries into Matrix. Then you pre-process data set. So let's say there could be features that are irrelevant for that sample being classified as malicious or non-malicious. So there could be a feature that has no correlation between the class values and the sample itself. So you can just remove those features and it will reduce the dimensionality of your problem. So it will also help with the training process of your model. Then we'll split that data set into training and testing set. So there are multiple ways to do that. There is one way called as cross validation. So where you create multiple training and testing sets from the same data set and evaluate your model on those sets. So then we'll build a logistic regression model and train a logistic regression model on our training set. Then we'll build a neural network model and train that neural network on our training set. Then we'll use the testing set to evaluate both the models and find out which model is working well on our data set. Once we have the best model, we can deploy it as an application. So let's have a look at this code. Yeah. So these are some of the libraries that we have to import. So we are using Python here, and this is a Jupyter notebook, which is just like a Python interpreter, but on browsers. So you can go ahead and edit any cell and run those cells separately. So this could be very helpful while building the models also. So here we are importing pandas library, then sklearn model, sklearn library, and we are importing the logistic regression models. Now we'll load our data set. So pandas has a read CSV function which can be used to load any CSV file. But in our particular case, we have this operator as a separator for different features. So we have to pass that operator as a separator function. Then we'll have we'll have a look at what is there inside our data set. So data frame dot columns will tell you what columns are there in our data set. So these are the features that are being extracted using P file library. So features like name of that file, MD5, hash of that file, what machine was it developed for, then different characteristics and the length of data, subsystems, and multiple different features for that binary file. And as I've told you, the last column represents whether the file is legitimate or not, or whether the file is malicious or not. So the shape of our data set is 138047 by 57, which means there are 57 columns and these many number of rows in our data set. So now there is a function called dataframe.describe, which basically describes the numerical values inside your data set. So here you can see that the minimum value for this particular feature in your data set is 224 and the maximum value is 352. So it could have different meaning, and for different features this range may differ. So using these values you can judge like what algorithms or what pre-processing methodologies to use on your data set. So now you can see that in our data set we have MD5 hash for every file. But as you know that hashing algorithms are meant not to preserve any pattern inside a given input, which means that the MD5 hash that has been calculated from our sample files will not be of any use for machine learning algorithms to judge the pattern inside samples. So we can just neglect that MD5 hash from our data set. So we'll drop that column. Then name of file may not be relevant. So you could have cmd.exe as a binary file and which could be malicious. So it may or may not represent whether the file is malicious or not. So there is no correlation between name of file and the label for your sample. So we can also drop that column as well. So that way we'll first create a variable and put the features inside that variable. So here data X will store the columns starting from second column up to last but first column. So it will only store the features and not the labels. And data Y will have all the labels inside it. Then we'll implement normalization on our data set. So this particular normalization will convert every number inside the data set in a range between 0 to 1. So after that, we have loaded our features and labels into different variables. We can use train test split function in sklearn library to split the data set into training and testing set. So here you can see that we are passing data X and data Y, and test size is 0.3, which means 30% of the samples will go in testing set and 70% of the samples are there in training set. Okay, now let's build the logistic regression model. Till now, we have loaded the data set and pre-processed the data set, and we have got a set of features and labels, and then divided that into training and testing sets. Now it's time to build our models and train those models on our training set. So from sklearn, we are importing logistic regression model, and just by running .fit function on that model and passing the training set, we can train the model. So it is that easy to actually train your model. So most of your time should be spent on like generating the data set, so that you can clean the data set as much as possible, so that the model can learn from those data sets easily, and you will get very efficient high performance models from that. So after running fit, the model logistic variable will have a trained logistic regression model. So that is how a logistic regression model is built using sklearn. Now we'll build a neural network. So for building the neural network, we are going to use Keras library. Now Keras uses TensorFlow in backend, and this is how you build a model using Keras. So if you just do model.add and specify the layer, it will add a particular layer in your model. So in our example, we have seen that there was one input layer, two hidden layers, and one output layer. In this particular case, we have the same configuration. So we have one input layer, one hidden layer which has 128 neurons, another hidden layer has 64 neurons, and the output layer will have 1 neuron. And these are the activation functions for that particular layer. Here you can see that the input dimension that we are passing is datax.shape1, which means it will have a number of neurons which are equal to the features that we have in our data set. Then we are going to use RMS prop optimizer as an optimization function. So these three lines will actually build a neural network for you. Then this line will represent what optimizer function to use and with what learning rate. And then you can do model.compile to specify optimization algorithm and loss for that particular neural network. And just like in logistic regression, we can run model.fit function and pass the training and testing set, and it will train the model on your given training set. So it will train the model for 20 iterations, which means there are epochs are 20, which means it will train the model on 20 iterations. And after that training, you can evaluate both the models, the logistic regression model and neural network model, on your training, on your testing set, and figure out which model is working well. So once you run this code, you can see that after every epoch, we'll get some loss and accuracy. So this loss and accuracy value is calculated on training set, and val loss is the validation loss and val accuracy is the validation accuracy, which is calculated on testing set. So ideally, after every iteration, you should have the loss should decrease and the accuracy should increase. So after every iteration, so this is the result for first epoch, and you can see that the loss goes on decreasing. It decreases from 0.02 to a value of 0.0093, which is not the best ideal value for loss function, but you can change the hyperparameters, you can change number of iterations, and you can run the model again to get a better loss and better accuracy on it. So this particular plot will represent the entire training process. So the y-axis represents loss and the x-axis represents epochs. So after every iteration, you can see the loss is decreasing. the blue line, the blue curve here represents the loss on training set, and the orange curve represents the loss on testing set. Same for accuracy. So you can see that after every iteration, the accuracy goes on increasing, and the accuracy on validation set or testing set also goes on increasing. So this is how the model should work. So after every iteration, you should get better accuracy, and after every iteration, you should get better loss. So one more important thing to notice here is that uh, after every iteration, if the loss on training set is decreasing, but you are getting a higher loss on testing set, which means your model is overfitting. So you have to change few hyperparameters to tweak the model so that it does not overfit to your data set. Now let's validate how our models are working. So we'll run our logistic regression model, and calculate predictions on testing set, and we'll get the predictions in LR test spread variable, and we'll calculate the confusion matrix and accuracy score for logistic regression model. Then we will do the same thing for our neural network model. We'll run the neural network model on same testing set and calculate accuracy and confusion matrix on that testing set. So at the end, you can see that this is the confusion matrix that is generated for logistic regression model. So this particular value in confusion matrix represents true positive values, and these are true negative values. So all the diagonal values should be higher, and non-diagonal values should be lower in a confusion matrix. So in this case, you can see that there are so many false positives when you are using your logistic regression model. And the accuracy on logistic regression model is 97.32%. So which is not the best accuracy to go with. So you can change hyperparameters of these models and get a better accuracy and confusion matrix. So again, you could have different evaluation parameters to evaluate your model. So you could have a look at precision, recall, and F1 score for every model, and identify what model is working best for your use case. For example, in this particular use case, you don't want to have many false positives. If you have false positives, it will hinder with the user experience. And say you are building a model in healthcare domain. Suppose you are building a model to identify whether the patient is infected with COVID-19 or not. In that particular case, you don't want to have false negatives. You don't want to have a case where the model is saying that the person is negative and it is actually positive and it could infect multiple people. So depending on use case, you should have different evaluation parameters to test your model. So in this particular case, you can see the diagonal values for artificial neural network or the neural network model are better than the logistic regression model. Also, the accuracy on testing set for neural network is better. So which means the neural network model is clearly better than the logistic regression model, and you can use this model for further predictions. So just a brief overview of what we did. We loaded the data set, we pre-processed it, we removed few features from the data set which are not relevant in classification. Then we converted that data set into training and testing set. We trained different models on that data set and evaluated those models and found out what models are working well for your use case. So yeah, this is how you go ahead with building different models on your data sets, and on different use cases. This is the standard process to follow most of the times, and free feel to go ahead and try out different data sets and build different models on it. Yeah, this is it. This is it from my side. If you have some time, we can take more questions and let's have a look at if you have any questions here.
Yeah, Nikhil, we have a lot of questions coming in from the attendees. So would you like to start with the chat box or
Yeah,
Q&A?
yeah. So I'm going to the chat box and yeah. So the first question by Abhilasha is that is Desmos open source? So yeah, Desmos is a website, you can access it. It's desmos.com/calculator and go ahead, type in any equation and tweak few parameters inside that equation and see how that graph is being plotted. So the other question is that how to port trained model for embedded devices. So if you're targeting embedded devices, I would say you go ahead and start building models using TensorFlow. Let's say you're targeting say mobile devices, you can use TF Lite, which is TensorFlow Lite version of your model. So you can use TensorFlow to build those lightweight models. So there are few questions on how to detect DDoS attacks using machine learning. So I would say first collect some data set and label that data set, then go ahead with the standard process like identify what features are relevant. So you extract some features and build the data set and try out different models on it. So it depends totally on your data set how to proceed with that. So let's take one last question. How am I? Okay, so the question from Joanna is that how NML or deep learning model is kept inside a software. So we have seen that what a trained model means is that we have a set of weights and biases, and those weights and biases could be stored, say, in a JSON file or in a serialized way, and can be deployed inside model. And different APIs can be used to call those models. So just like we have created one variable which represents a model and trained it, you can directly dump that variable on disk and use that as a model. So for fuzzing softwares, someone has asked for fuzzing softwares. I would say you go ahead on Pyoto website. There is a blog that I have written to create inputs for fuzzing softwares. So yeah, you can have a look at that. There are a few more questions. You can connect with me on Twitter or on my email ID. I would like to answer your questions there, but for the constraint of time, we cannot go ahead with the questions right now. Yeah, thank you all.
Nikhil, there is one more question. Actually, it's about your blog. In one of your blog, you generated PDF files using RNN algorithm. Please recommend approach to generate exe files.
Yeah, that is a very good question. First of all, thank you for reading that blog. So the problem with using deep learning for generating inputs for fuzzing is that it will only preserve the syntax in your inputs. So in PDF files, the syntax only matters, not the semantics. So let's say you go ahead with creating, say, exe files, and the output is probabilistic, which means that while creating exe files, one byte might not be right inside the exe file. So any parser or any target application that is using that exe file will directly reject that exe file and it will not even execute. So I would not suggest using deep learning applications to generate inputs uh, where the semantics is important, like languages. Let's say you cannot use LSTM fuzzer for fuzzing JavaScript parsers. So this is how you should go about it.
Yeah, thank you, Nikhil, for such a introduction to ML and DL to security. So Nikhil is organizing one more webinar, which is about how secure our ML applications. It will be on next Thursday, 9th April, and on the same time, 3 p.m. IST. And this webinar will take a look at a few ML specific vulnerabilities and he will discuss about possible mitigations for that as well. Nikhil, would you like to talk about that? what will you cover in the next webinar?
So right now we have seen that we can build different cybersecurity specific applications, which could be on a defensive end of cybersecurity. But ML applications, like just like other technology, are not totally foolproof and they're not totally secure. There are few vulnerabilities inside ML applications which can be abused by attackers to gain certain results. So just like there is something called as adversarial learning, there is something called as data set poisoning and model skewing attacks. So we'll have a look at these different attacks where we can bypass ML applications wherever they are implemented. So we'll just have a look at those kind of attacks in our next webinar.
Yeah, that's great. And if you guys have any more questions, you can ask directly to Nikhil. You can find him on Twitter, as well as you can directly email him as well. Nikhil, would you like to mention your Twitter handle and your Payatu email ID? Nikhil, can you hear me? Yeah, perfect. So this is Nikhil's Twitter handle. You can directly ask, you can DM him over Twitter, or you can ask questions to him via email. Nikhil's email ID is nikhilj@payatu.com, nikhilj@payatu.com. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and make sure you protect yourself and others from getting sick during this pandemic. Wash your hand at least for 20 seconds, and be supportive, be careful, be attentive, be kind, and be ready, and let's together fight the coronavirus pandemic. Stay safe, stay home, and follow the guidelines by WHO. This is a link from WHO website where you can find out advisories from WHO. Thank you. See you in the next webinar. Stay connected with Payatu on social media. This is a Facebook, a LinkedIn, and Twitter link. And I think we have one more chats. Yeah. Yes, please share the recording of the webinar and slides. Yeah, Abhilasha, we will share the recording and the slides used during this webinar. By today, end of the day, you will have the recording of this webinar. I think that answers your question. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and see you in the next webinar.